We're on.
Hi, everybody. That was kind of an exciting beginning. Welcome to is this our fifth, Kate, summer camp? I think this is our fifth installment of the summer camp series. I like to call it a wing and a prayer as the title for this one. But Greg had another title. What was that one you had?
Was that safe for work? I don't know.
No, it was a cute one too. Anyway, I'm glad you're all here. Apparently we're all birds of a feather. Okay, I'll stop.
Yeah.
Kate, would you like to, well, no, let's go ahead and have an opening prayer. This comes from St. Francis of Assisi and his sermon to the birds, which I never had heard before. The story goes, Francis was at a spot beside some trees and he began an impromptu sermon, and it was recorded by the monks who were traveling with him and written down. Their report was published in the ancient book, The Little Flowers of St. Francis. Let us pray. My sweet little sisters, birds of the sky, you are bound to heaven, to God, your creator. In every beat of your wings and every note of your songs, praise him. He has given you the greatest of gifts, the freedom of the air. You neither sow nor reap, yet God provides for you the most delicious food, rivers and lakes to quench your thirst, mountains and valleys for your home, tall trees to build your nest, and the most beautiful clothing, a change of feathers for every season. You and your kind were preserved in Noah's Ark. Clearly, our Creator loves you dearly, since he gives gifts so abundantly. So please beware, my little sisters, of the sin of ingratitude, and always sing praises to God. Amen. Kate, would you like to play our commercial for this event?
Okay, let's hopefully my computer's not too slow. I'm up in the mountains, so we'll see.
I could share and do it if we have problems.
Little bird, fly through my window. Little bird, fly through my window. Little bird, fly through my window. Buy molasses candy. Fly through my window, my sugar lump. Fly through my window, my sugar lump, and buy molasses candy. Now, who knows a bird? Robin, robin, fly through my window. Robin, robin, fly through my window. Robin, robin, fly through my window. Buy molasses candy. Fly through my window, my sugar lump. Fly through my window, my sugar lump, and buy molasses candy. Who knows another? Bluebird, fly through my window. Bluebird, fly through my window. Bluebird, fly through my window. Buy molasses candy. Fly through my window, my sugar lump. Fly through my window, my sugar lump, and buy molasses candy. Got another? Crow, crow, fly through my window. Crow, crow, fly through my window. Crow, crow, fly through my window. Buy molasses candy. Fly through my window, my sugar lump. Fly through my window, my sugar lump, and buy molasses candy. Bob White, fly through my window. Bob White, fly through my window. Bob White, fly through my window. Buy molasses candy. Fly through my window, my sugar lump. Fly through my window, my sugar lump, and buy molasses candy. Ever hear a whippoorwill about 9:30 in the evening? Whippoorwill, fly through my window. Whippoorwill, fly through my window. Whippoorwill, fly through my window. Buy molasses candy. Fly through my window, my sugar lump. Fly through my window, my sugar lump, and buy molasses candy. Hummingbird, fly through my window. Hummingbird, fly through my window. Hummingbird, fly through my window. Buy molasses candy. fly through my window, my sugar lump, fly through my window, my sugar lump, and buy molasses candy.
I love that.
Good.
You have to know if you've attended any of these summer camps that the fellowship committee loves a pun. So I'm sorry about that. I am super excited about this event. I think it's because everybody loves birds, and I think everybody watches birds and listens for birds. And I'm really excited about it because about a week and a half ago, I ran in the house and started yelling at Emily, "There's a bird in our garage, there's a bird in our garage." And she said, what kind is it? And I was like, "It's brown and it has 2 legs." But now that I have worked a little bit with Greg, I know that that was actually a thrasher. So I'm very excited I learned that. Let me introduce our camp counselor for the day, Greg Beck, who has only been a member for a short time. I would guess March, April, same time as you, John.
Christian.
Oh, Christian, I'm sorry. As you guys, right?
Yeah.
Same time. And but he has been a very active member of the fellowship committee, and we love having him. He has the same corny sense of humor I do. He's been birding been a birder for quite a while, since 1995. He's a member of New Hope Audubon, which is an affiliate of the National Audubon Society. And he's active in local conservation groups, one being the Eno River Association and Triangle Land Conservancy. You named about 10 more, Greg, and I cannot remember what those were.
Gosh, there's hi everyone, Friends of Plant Conservation, Ellerby Creek Association, Saxapaw River group down there. Any group that's active in conservation, I want to be part of. Thanks.
If you have questions during his actual program takes about an hour, and that's kind of him hoofing it. So if you have questions and you think you can hang off until the end when we have a question and answer time, that's great. If you think you'd like to talk about or ask something about something he's showing right then, just raise your hand and I'll try to, I'll see if we can call on you at that time. So Greg, I give it to you.
All right, so this is where I share my screen, I take it.
Yes, sir.
Now can you see my screen?
Not yet.
I have to put that one on there, right? Share. Does that work?
You bet.
Yes.
All right. Now I'm going to enlarge my speaker's notes here so that I can see them because it's dark. Hi, everyone. I really relish the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, not as an expert, not as one of the PhD or fellows at Duke. There's a lot of people doing wonderful research on birds in our area. I'm strictly a naturalist. And I think a lot of the things that we've been talking about in terms of questions, I may cover during the talk. So I do appreciate you holding back a little bit. We will have an occasional pop quiz to keep everybody awake, but welcome aboard. I think, as it was mentioned, people have always been fascinated with birds. And in fact, when the Bible was first being codified, birds were one of the first creatures that were mentioned. And there are a lot of creatures that could have been mentioned, but birds said, be fruitful, multiply. And they certainly have, haven't they? They are everywhere. It's one of the reasons why we go birding is because we really can't get away from them. So we might as well learn about them. It's also something that we can do outdoors, get rid of put our screens down and go outside and appreciate the beauty of nature. And anytime I go into the woods or the fields or the shore, Christian, whenever I get over there, it's not just birds that you're looking at. It's the whole of creation. That could be, how was that sand formed, from what mountain formation 300 million years ago? Why is that tree there, and how does it support the web of life that's around? They also sound good. We're going to play some bird songs, and they look pretty good too. Sometimes the best singers aren't always the flashiest looking, but we're going to explore that a little bit also. I think also there's so much to learn, and we're really lucky, as I said, being in this area. We can learn a lot about birds. This morning I went out early because I will share that information with you later why I went out. But I came across a couple that obviously were Duke students or graduate students, and I said, gosh, I wasn't expecting to see so much out here in the middle of August in this heat wave. And the fellow just very matter of fact stated, well, this is the post-breeding dispersal. So I added that to my armamentarium, and I told him I would use it in the talk. So all the birds that have been born are now fledging, and they're taking off, and they're starting to disperse into their own territories. So there's lots of birds around, lots of juveniles, and they're hard to tell apart, but that's why we go out with birders. And the birders are the main reason I think that I go out, or one of the main reasons. It's just, there's so many really great people that you meet birding. And it's, what Elizabeth said, birds of a feather is so true. You can get people talking about anything bird related with birders, and you're going to learn something. And it's wonderful to go out in groups because, what you're looking out ahead of you, there might be something in back of you, and that's why we go out together. A little bit about why I've been birding. I think we all have early childhood memories. My earliest memory of birds, I can remember very clearly. I was around 3 or 4 years old, and I got up early in the morning and looked out the back window, and on the lawn, from the second story on the lawn, I could see this robin, and I knew robins, but it was foraging around in the backyard, and it pulled out this gigantic worm, just like this picture. And it swallowed it like a piece of spaghetti. And that just blew my 3 or 4 year old mind. And I woke up my parents and I said, look what I saw, and they just couldn't believe it. They laughed and went back to bed. But I think that sort of ignited a long-term joy of nature within me, and something that stuck with me. And I was pretty much a free-range kid growing up in Ohio. We moved around a lot, so I was subjected to a lot of different habitats, hung around with a lot of outdoor people, scouting from coast to coast was always good. Got involved in birding because I did a lot of cycling when I lived in New Jersey, and I would pass by these fields with birds that had the most beautiful sounds, and I didn't know what they were. Luckily, there was a local Audubon branch in Basking Ridge, New Jersey, where I lived. And I started going on bird walks. And that really is the best way to learn about birds, is to go out with some of these organizations and learn about them. So that's been ignited since then. I've been traveling a lot, and there's always an opportunity to bird. When I was judging a dog agility trial in Lake Charles, Louisiana, it turns out that the trial secretary was also the manager of a local wildlife refuge. And her husband took me out after the trial, and we drove up to this pool down at the mouth of the Mississippi. And there was a peregrine falcon sitting on top of the sign. So if you want to know where exactly I saw this peregrine falcon, the picture tells a story. Keep an eye on that bird's eye. It'll come up later. All right. From coast to coast, I was judging up in a trial up near Anchorage, and decided, because I was in Alaska, to spend a few extra days, and everybody talked about the town of Homer, how cool it was. So I drove down to Homer. It's about a 4-hour drive. Doesn't look like that long on there, but Alaska is huge. And there happened to have been a wildlife shorebird festival going on there that I didn't know about. I just stumbled into it. Luckily, I have binoculars. And every year, the folks from everywhere come and celebrate the return of the shorebirds to Kachemak Bay. And these birds have been traveling for hundreds and hundreds of miles over ocean without stopping. And they finally land in Homer on the beach. And they're just landing, they're exhausted. They will land on your camera tripod. It is just thrilling to see this this phenomenon that has been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the rhythms of nature. Even the little tiny plover down there and the ruddy turnstone on the right are celebrating getting back, and so do we, and we celebrate them. The natural beauty is always evident on a bird walk. The indigo bunting is very common in our fields and forest edges right now. And if you go out, you will definitely see an indigo bunting, and you will definitely hear them too. It's easy. Don't tell anybody I told you this, because we don't often like to interfere with the rhythm of nature, but you can call those birds in by playing their song. And if you play the song of an indigo bunting, guaranteed, if there's anyone near, they're going to come and buzz you. And so they'll land close by, and then you get a really close-up look. So it's a beautiful bird. They're fun to watch. The juveniles are out there now with their big eyes and sort of tawny colored feather coats. It's fun to see. But like I say, there's always other things to see out there. And right now you see a lot of tiger swallowtails on milkweed. And we learn that butterflies actually have receptors in their legs that determine whether a plant is really going to be good for them. So they kind of step on their food before they eat it, before they find out what's good to eat. So there's always something to learn. And if there aren't any birds around, if it's past like 10 in the morning or noon, there's always other things to do. And this time of year, you can always go out in the woods if it's been raining and the conditions are right and find mushrooms. And I do a lot of mushroom foraging, 4 seasons. And this is sort of the one of the holy grails of mushrooms. It's chanterelles. They are delicious, and nothing is like them. When you're cooking them, you get this apricot smell coming up, and they just aid everything else you're cooking. So they're a lot of fun. We're not the only birders around. I'm so glad we started with St. Francis of Assisi. I have a hunch as to why he went out and preached to the birds, and maybe Carol can identify with this. He was faced with the decision at one point whether to stay in the monastery or go out and preach. And his mentor said, "Frank, you go out and preach." And so he pushed him out the door, and Francis went out, and I think that he preached to the birds because he was just practicing his sermon. So he got a pretty good audience to that. But as we all practice our notes, he did too. But he has graced 10,000 bird baths from coast to coast ever since, and he's really a model for our role in nature. The fellow in the middle, you probably recognize as Ludwig van Beethoven. And I put him in there because early in life, I think I was 5 years old when I saw the movie Fantasia by Walt Disney. And that featured a lot of classical music. Among the pieces was the Sixth Symphony. It's a very representational symphony. And in the second movement, he's representing the country folks who are on a picnic, and they're having a picnic and dancing and having a good time. And a big storm comes in. And then the storm passes, and then he comes up, Beethoven writes this nice melody, and it's interrupted by 3 bird songs. And you can make out the birds really well when you listen to the Sixth Symphony, second movement, after the storm. It starts out with a nightingale, and then he puts in a little quail quote, and then he has a cuckoo. So you hear this and you go, this guy loved birds. And evidently, his favorite bird was a bird called the yellow bunting, or goldammer. And the sound of the goldammer goes like da 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 da. So you may recognize other Beethoven music with that da 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 da. Would anybody like to take a guess as to who the fellow on the right is? Okay. He goes by 3 initials most of the time. He also has the same first name as the fellow on the left. This is a very young Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And Roosevelt was an avid birder, and all those birds behind him on the shelf are birds that he shot and stuffed. So that was the way people used to do birding. They would shoot the birds or trap the birds and stuff them and study them. Well, we don't do that today. but back then they did. So one of our most famous birders who really kickstarted birding in America was John James Audubon. And he painted birds in their natural setting to kind of tell a story. So in this case, this is a pair of summer tanagers, the male on the top and the female on the bottom. And they are foraging in a grove of muscatnuck grapes. And you would think, well, they are grape eaters. Okay, well, we're going to cover that. But you know, he had to hunt birds, and he wanted to catalog every bird in America. These days, we hunt birds via a different way. And my partner Susan put together that photo at the left, which was to sort of imitate Audubon. But we take pictures now instead of shooting them. And is Poppy here today, Kate?
She's not.
Okay, please tell her with no disobliging spirit that summer tanagers, although it looks like they feed on grapes and berries, they will. However, their main diet, and they're very common here in North Carolina, their main diet is bees and wasps. So they will go in my blueberry patches that I frequent, and they will trap the bees and the wasps. They'll grab them, and then they will scrape their abdomens off to get the stingers out and eat what's left. So, you know, interesting diet, and you got to be pretty good if you're going to trap all those bees and wasps. We can't escape birds. We name our football teams after birds. We write poems about birds, and believe it or not, there's as you know, Edgar Allan Poe wrote that poem, The Raven, and so the Baltimore football team thought it was a good idea to call themselves the Ravens because Poe was from Baltimore. And the mascot's name is Poe, believe it or not. And that's why you can kind of see why Edgar Allan just doesn't look too happy there, you know, seeing what's happened to his poem. Also in popular culture, birds are happy birds, angry birds, and goofy birds. So they're everywhere. We can't escape them. I'm not going to read this poem, but just think about an 8th century monk who became Charlemagne's confidant, Alcuin, Archbishop of York. And imagine what life was like back in Charlemagne's time when the sun went down, you didn't have much light. You didn't have automobile traffic or motorcycles running down your street. It was quiet. And maybe he was having a tough time coming up with a sermon or something like that, but he wrote a poem about his favorite nightingale. And they have a beautiful song. It made him write this poem after the bird disappeared for some reason, but I won't read it, but you ought to read it later. But he thanks God for the bird, and he says, if the cherubim are gonna thank the Almighty, then the bird ought to be happy, and we ought to be happy about the bird. All right, so the bird actually sounds like this. Let's see if we can hear this. We haven't done an audio file yet. Is that audible? Is that audible? Okay.
I heard it. Yes.
Good. Okay. And that goes on for a while. Okay, but if it's in the dead of night, you know, it must be very comforting to hear that sort of thing. This is my favorite poem, and the nightingale gets a pretty good rap, and an Englishman wrote this poem in the 19th century, and I will read it. The nightingale has a lyre of gold. The lark's is a clarion call. And the blackbird plays but a boxwood flute, but I love him best of all, for his song is all of the joy of life. And we in the mad spring weather, we too have listened till he sang, our hearts and lips together. I love that poem, and I have that image in my house. Bird song can be very, very inspirational for us. It's in most major religious traditions that birds are somehow involved. On the left is our newest United States postage stamp. And would anybody take a guess as to what that bird is? It's a very, very common bird in Native American traditions, from Alaska to South America. It's the raven. And according to the Tlingit tribe tradition up in Alaska, The raven was the creature that brought light to the world. And in this raven's beak, you can see that he actually stole light from the humans he was with and went out a smoke hole in the ceiling and brought light to the world. So an esteemed bird you can see from Alaska to South America. In the middle is Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris, and he's the falcon-headed bird, representing a soaring in flight. And you can see my photo of the peregrine falcon to the right of that. And notice the eye. The eye in the falcon is supposed to represent the sun and the moon, and it's quite a distinctive eye, isn't it? Right. In Japanese culture, the cranes that you can see in the upper part of the painting there are signs of good luck, and they're very auspicious. And Japanese cranes are just beautiful. So they are accompanying the seven happy gods of good luck in their boat on their journey. All right. Oh, all right. Pop quiz number 1. This is open book, though you won't have time. It's not multiple choice. But Noah released birds. What was the first bird that Noah released to ascertain the existence of land?
Raven.
Hey, all right, Miss Ford.
Yes.
Regina, I got every one of these quiz questions wrong. Let me
Oh,
just.
no, you didn't.
Yeah.
That's okay. We'll work on it.
Did all right. We're not going to be able to stump the panel today. It was a raven. In Genesis, one of the first stories in Genesis, after the first group of people went down with the ship, God sent out a raven, and there's some historical precedent for that because people who were sailing the Mediterranean would often bring a raven, and if they got outside of land and they didn't know where they were and got lost in a storm, they would send a raven out, because if it didn't come back, then there was land out there somewhere, because it was probably eating. If it came back, then they had to keep sailing. But there is a species of raven in the Middle East, and it's common, so they've been around a long time. This is a fascinating bird because it survives in Alaska and it survives in the desert. You've got pictures of it in Moab, Utah, where it's 115 degrees. It's a black bird. How does it survive? Black is supposed to absorb heat. Well, the iridescent feathers on ravens reflect heat. So, adaptation. The second bird, of course, we all know was the what? Mourning dove, right? Okay. I asked Pastor Puckett about this, and I said, why a mourning dove? They're kind of, kind of birds. If you wanted to make a splash, why not have the spirit descend like a pelican? Splash. But, who knows? That's just my thought. I didn't write it. So, the birds are mentioned all over the Bible. You can see some of them listed here. Storks, swallows, eagles, lots of eagles. We'll talk about that in a minute. But how about a hen? Really? Okay, here's quiz number 2. All right, what Bible personage compares themselves to a hen? All right.
Jesus talked about his father being like that.
2 for 2.
I'm waiting on my present, Greg.
And a couple of weeks ago, I read the passages that lead up to this, because I read where, Jesus was sitting there by the money box watching all the people, the rich people making a big deal about putting the money in the money box, and the widow comes up and gives a shekel or 2. But then at the end, Jesus says, and this is the Lord speaking, right? Says, the city kills its prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you are not willing. Think of how much we are loved when the Lord compares himself to a hen. He aches for his creation. I know it's also in some verses of the Bible. He aches for his creation as a woman in childbirth. So much does he want us to love his creation and himself. So now you know. All right, here's the third one, and then we'll go on to some other stuff. But This is kind of fun. What major personage, member of a well-known quartet in the New Testament, is symbolized as an eagle? And it's not one of those funky four horsemen.
Is it John on? I can't remember.
You got it, man. What a group.
Okay.
Saint John the Evangelist. If you go to any church or cathedral or monastery in Europe, you'll often see representations of the evangelists as a man, a lion, a calf or an ox, or an eagle. And because most folks in those days couldn't read, they were told that these symbols, which are actually from the first chapter of Ezekiel, that's the reference for these, are the representations. So Matthew is represented as a man, and all these symbols have wings. Mark is a lion, represented as the lion. And if you turn that bottom left picture on the left, look at it, counterclockwise, you can see that it's an ox. Okay, it has wings, but then you have the eagle, and that's John. So John is represented as an eagle. We have eagles here in North Carolina. We have bald eagles. We also have birds that look like eagles. They are ospreys. And it's fun to watch ospreys that breed around here put their nests at the top of power line poles out near Falls Lake or Flat River Impoundment. You'll often see osprey, and it's fun. Go to Jordan Lake and you'll see a fair number of eagles and ospreys. So we do have these large birds of prey here. All right, that looks like a blank slide. Oh, because we're gonna take the walk that I took a month ago when I was coming up with some ideas for this talk. I said, well, I think I'll just walk outside the door and catalog the birds that I see around Duke Chapel. Okay, but before we get ready for our walk, we're going to talk about a few things that we might want to keep in mind. One is our alarm clock, because we're going to start early. I mean, we're up with the chickens, literally. We started a walk yesterday at 7 in the morning, and that was starting the walk. I'm not truly an early morning person, but I have never regretted going out for a walk. We're always wearing clothing that's appropriate for the season. This time of year, a lot of loose fitting, light clothing. If you can get it permethrin treated to keep the bugs away, that's good. Otherwise, bring some bug spray with you or any other seasonal needs you need. Hand warmers in the wintertime, because that Christmas bird count can get kind of cold if you're standing around in the rain. Worth it, but cold. Want to make sure we don't get lost, so most phones have a GPS these days. You can see these folks, the one fella on the left there is carrying a bird guide, because if you get involved with a bunch of sparrows, you really need to know what's happening there. All right, and you'll notice that they all have binoculars. Okay, so we have, most of us, even those of us over 35 have pretty decent eyesight, but binoculars really help. They will bring you up close and personal. And that bird that you don't think, looks like much with your naked eye, that little sparrow, when you get up close, it can be very pretty, as we'll see. There's a spotting scope there too, that's fun. But good pair of binoculars is good. When you come out for walks with us at New Hope Audubon Society, one of our walks, if you don't have binoculars, we'll give you a pair. We also want to keep our distance. You can see the comparison with the two vultures that we have hanging around here this time of year, and they're easy to spot even in the heat of the day, because they're gliding around up there. And what's fun is that the turkey vulture, the one on top, hunts by scent primarily. So he's flying lower to the ground, whereas the black vulture, the one in the bottom picture, hunts mainly by sight. And you'll see them up much higher. And you'll notice it's white wingtips and it's black head, whereas the turkey vulture has a red head. So there's two kinds of vultures. You'll see them early in the morning on top of telephone poles and things and power lines, spreading their wings to dry out from the wood. But let's keep some social distance if we can. And always remember that when we're out looking at birds, they are looking at us. And so we want to keep our conversation, as much as we like getting out in post-COVID times, as much as we're excited to actually see real human beings, we want to keep the conversations down a little bit, not do a lot of pointing and dancing around. So They're watching us, and they have pretty good labels for us too. Christian and I were talking before the talk about why sometimes we don't see a lot of birds different times of year. A lot of it has to do with the geography that we're in, the habitat. Could even be the time of day. That nighthawk at the bottom right is a common bird in Durham, in the city of Durham. If you walk around at night, in the evening, you will see and hear night herons flying between the buildings, grabbing bugs out of the air. And they make a sound that you'll think is like the traffic signal. You might want to look it up on one of your birding apps, the night heron. Similarly, that spotted sandpiper on the left at the bottom, you wouldn't expect to see that up on Occoneechee Mountain, because it's a shorebird. That's out from near Falls Lake. And if I'm in New Jersey or North Carolina, I don't expect to see a yellow-headed blackbird or see a quail. That's a quail from out Boise, Idaho. See a quail on the shoreline. So habitat has a lot to do with it too, but so does migration. And we covered habitat. Oh, I want to cover two birds. How are we doing on time? I've got 28 minutes down so far for my talk.
Yeah, let's see. We started about 5 after. It's 4. Well, you started about 10 after. It's 4:42.
All right.
We're okay.
All right, I'll play these quickly because when you talk about beautiful bird songs, one time I was on my bicycle out near Bahama, and on my left in a field was an eastern meadowlark. That's the bird on the right. And in the woods on the other side of the road, in the woods, was this wood thrush. And they were both singing at the same time. And they have arguably the most beautiful songs in birddom, the wood thrush. And they go on like that. Stop this, stop. They go on like that because they have a hard syrinx instead of a soft throat like we do in their voice box, so they can produce overtones. So they produce 2 notes at once. And the eastern meadowlark you will definitely hear if you go out and walking around in the fields. Oh, let me stop this. This is a video, and listen to the woman who notices the bird. Tell her husband to turn the music off. This is out near the Mississippi River. You get the idea. And these little recordings don't do justice, just as the sound of our pipe organs don't do justice on my little computer speaker on Sunday mornings. All right. So if you go out and it's a quiet afternoon and you hear that eastern meadowlark, you will sing praises. All right. Let's go to our next slide. Oh, we're in this loop again. Here we go. All right. Another determinant is migration. We don't see any white-throated sparrows this time of year because they are all up north. On the right, you can see the range map that shows where they are when they're breeding, and that's up north, northern United States and Canada. So these white-throated sparrows are up there right now, but they're going to be coming back down starting late September to spend the winter. And when they do, they have a beautiful sound, but it's always nice to see them. It's sad to see them leave. Music. Well, it's not playing, so I'm not going to play that. You're going to have to look for that in the The way we remember that is, oh, Sam Peabody, Peabody, Peabody. All right. Now, this is why you bring binoculars. You know, we don't pay too much attention to sparrows. We just notice them everywhere. But can you see some of the fine detail on the feathers in this picture of this white-throated sparrow? If that doesn't make you think about the wonders of creation and how, the way things are put together. I don't know what will, but that's a common bird with such beauty. All right, here's my, then we're going to get into some of the birds we saw on the walk, but here's my COVID bird. It was a very important bird to me early in the year when I was in pain just about every day. We had just had some insurrection happening in the Capitol. Walking through the woods at North Brumley, and look, what appears right before me is this yellow-throated warbler on a branch. And I thought to myself, that little bird just flew up from Florida or Cuba or Honduras or wherever. And he's been doing this. He survived that flight, and I'll survive this hip and this COVID and everything else like that too. So if birds can give you inspiration, this one certainly did. So I will never forget that. But migration is something it's always happening. It's been going on over our heads for thousands of years. We don't notice it, but it's one of those determinants. All right. Some of the places I've gone birding are Sandy Creek Park. I'll mention these. Sarah Duke Gardens is great. I like Sandy Creek as a beginning place to go birding, but my two favorite places are Horton Grove Nature Preserve up near me and the Confluence area for Eno River Association, because they're quiet, they're pretty secluded, and just and very, very fun. But here's where we're looking at today. We're looking at urban habitat, right? Now around our campus here, there aren't a lot of real natural sources for food, and not much in the way of shelter unless you're a Carolina wren. But we can walk out inside. We see lots of birds. Here's one, that bird that just can't stop saying its name. It's an eastern towhee. And the reason why they call it a towhee and how do I stop this? I'm in this loop where I'm in presentation view and I can't stop it. Oh, that's what did it, didn't it? Okay, and he will tell you what to drink in the morning. If you can take this out. So he says to drink your tea, and that's all he says, and then he says his name 5 times. You'll see him all in the understory, scratching around on the ground, chasing away the other birds. A beautiful little bird, looks like a robin, just don't tell him that. All right, and we have our robin. We'll go over this briefly because most of them know them, but a lot of folks from up north consider them migrants, but here they're here all year round, which is kind of fun. And I discovered something while doing this talk, which is the fun of doing a walk. But remember that picture I showed you of the robin pulling the worm out of the ground? My first thing, well, they don't only consist of a diet of worms, and you kind of have to be a Lutheran to understand that reference, but they will eat worms in the morning, but then in the afternoon, they switch to other types of food. So the early bird gets the worms. That's where we get that phrase. So pretty birds, they're common. Watch what you put on your lawn because they do like to forage around our lawns. And then we have our crows. And did you know that we have two types of crows here in our neck of the woods? We have our American crow, and that's called as caw, caw, caw. But the fish crow has a completely different call. So he sounds like he's from New Jersey. We all know what the American crows sound like. Caw, caw, caw. Listen to the fish crow. You hear the difference there? Okay, versus an American crow. Okay, fish crow. Guarantee you'll hear them on campus. And most of the time, for most of their existence, they've lived near the shore, the beaches, but now they're coming inland, so we're hearing them. Northern mockingbirds are pretty common too. they can mimic up to around 200 different birds in their lifetime, but only do about 6 or 7 at a time. I'm going to play this one, and I'm going to see if you can pull out the birds in this that I pulled out. I couldn't quite get the first one, but the first bird I recognize is a mourning dove, then a cardinal, then an eastern wood pewee, a chipping sparrow, which is like a like a little sewing machine, and then a blue jay. So they will imitate other birds. See if you can pick those out from here. Cardinal. Chipping sparrow. Here comes the blue jay. All right, so they go on like that. It's fun to pick out their songs. Go back to that. When they land, they flash their wings out. I think it's to scare bugs up, and it's unmistakable. They're just they're an amazing bold little bird that'll sing all night long. Here's a little bird you'll find on our forest edges. I didn't see it on our walk, but you'll see this commonly because they look like a miniature mockingbird. It's a blue-gray gnatcatcher. They only weigh about 9 grams, but they are among our longest distance migrants. So they migrate from South America. These little 9-gram birds carried along by the wind, and they come back year after year. They can fletch or hatch 7 broods in a year, so they're pretty busy. They make their nests out of spider webs and lichens. So trees and bugs provide everything they need to make their nests, and they really don't catch gnats all that much. They catch larger bugs because gnats are pretty small, even though that bird's small. All right. Well, another species that we often see on walks and that sort of spoils our birdsong recordings. But we were kind of concerned about them because we didn't see as many last year, but they're coming back. including the Delta variants. All right. Well, we love our ruby-throated hummingbirds, and you really can't. You can't talk too much about hummingbirds. They're the most amazing little birds. They only weigh about 4 grams, and they are long-distance migrants. They're called apodioforms, which is Greek for footless. Because look at the little one feeding from a cardinal flower. And by the way, cardinal flowers are in bloom right now. They're beautiful. So watch for hummingbirds. They have the tiniest little feet. They can't really walk straight ahead like a crow does or perch. Like some of the other birds we've seen. They just have these. They can kind of shuffle along, but that makes them the perfect hovercraft. So always fun to watch. They won't stand any other birds coming near their hummingbird feeders or their flowers. They're very, very territorial. You could talk for an hour about hummingbirds, and some people do. All right, here's a question. Now this is for those of you who did not grow up in North Carolina. What is our North Carolina state bird? A, Carolina chickadee. B, Carolina parakeet. C, Carolina wren, or D, northern cardinal.
I grew up in North Carolina, but I know.
Okay, since no other questions, no other answers, what do you say?
Cardinal.
Cardinal. It is indeed a cardinal. Really original. Like six other states have the cardinal.
Yeah.
My home state of Ohio has cardinal. Virginia, I think, is cardinal. Right. So why didn't we get Carolina wren? Because South Carolina got it first.
That's right.
Carolina parakeet.
That's because cardinals are beautiful.
They are, and Linda, when folks from overseas come and visit, they're just astounded by cardinals. They're just like, wow, show us cardinals. And we go, oh yeah, cardinals. But someone was mentioning earlier that they mate for life. It's a joke that you'll never see just one cardinal. If you see one cardinal, look for its mate, because they're always calling to each other. They have these chip sounds. If you go in Duke Gardens, you can hear them chipping back and forth. All right. And they have lots of different songs, lots of different calls. Chiree, chiree, birdie, 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 which I won't play. And then one of my favorite birds is the Carolina wren, because it's just feisty looking. We're lucky in the United States because the New World, where we live, has around 80 species of wren, and Europe and Asia only have one. So we have lots of wrens, including the winter wren, which you will not see now. But this winter, if you're hiking near the Eno and you're near a brush pile and you see what looks like a little mouse running around, it might be a winter wren. If you hear it calling, then you'll know it is, because they are loud, as is the Carolina wren. The winter wren, gram for gram, is 10 times more powerful in its voice than a rooster. So when Carolina wrens get going, and they will often try to drown out other birds, it's like there's a rap battle going out there with the birds. You'll hear it's a beautiful bird, and then this Carolina wren says, no, it's my turn. And then they go in. But just a beautiful bird, they'll nest anywhere, and they also mate for life, quote unquote. But keep in mind that lots of things are dangerous for birds, and so they may have many mates during life. In Europe, there's a great song called The Wren, the King of All Birds, because they worship them in Druidic times because they're so prolific in terms of having lots and lots of young. A couple of sparrows. I heard a song sparrow out because it's summertime. And a song sparrow is a bird we can hear here in Durham. If you walk into a parking lot at Kroger's in the summertime, in the morning, you'll often hear a song sparrow. I'm going to play it. Beautiful song. Okay, I'm going to stop that and play it. Yeah, gotta go back. Sorry. Yeah. Versus, if you go into a field and hear a field sparrow, this is the other one I'll cover. But the song sparrow you'll hear, play it on from the Audubon site and learn that one. Field sparrow sounds like a ping pong ball. If you're out picking blueberries, you'll hear these a lot. Just sort of like dropping a ping pong ball on a table. Also, its pink beak is indicative. All these birds have something that will identify it. It's a pink conical beak on the field sparrow. It's the dark stripy breast on the song sparrow, but I pick them out by song. Okay, starling is getting no respect because there's so darn many of them. All right, but they're beautiful birds and they are fast. They can fly close to 50 miles an hour. All right, they were brought over by an Englishman in the early 1900s because he wanted every bird that was in Shakespeare. And little did he know that with the first 100 birds that he brought over, it grew to 200 million. But an amazing success story for this bird. Okay. I also heard an eastern bluebird out there, and everybody wants to hear bluebirds. They nest in cavities. There was some concern about their losing habitat, but people started building bluebird houses. And if they're not occupied by snakes, as this one in the center is, then the bluebirds, this is the same birdhouse. Okay, bluebird flew up to it on the left, and the snake popped out. Okay, well, I guess I had eggs for breakfast. So the reason why you want to put a baffle on your bluebird house, if you put it up, is to keep the snakes away. They have a really nice chortling sound or burbling sound. Yeah, I called it burbling, but the fellow that led the bird walk yesterday said it was a chortle, and I think chortle sounds better. So if you want to give them a proper home, and here's my partner Susan putting up her birdhouse. You want to have it at the right height. You want to have a good placement on the edge of an open space, because they like to look out into open spaces. And you want to put that baffle below it to try to keep the snakes away and other critters from getting up there. So if you have the way to put a bluebird house up, the New Hope Audubon Society sells them for cheap. Okay. All right. So after we're done with our walk, and I guess this was in July, I made a list of all the birds, and we always end up finding more birds than we thought we'd see. And it's fun for some people to keep a list. I don't keep a list. I know the birds that I want to see. And when I find a new bird, then it's always a good thing. Oh, bonus question time. All right, there's this, the tufted titmouse, common bird around here, has only one biblical book in mind when he calls. And what is it? I'm gonna play the song. Any guesses?
What?
He says the name of this book. See if you can get this. It's in the reason why we do this is so we get mnemonic devices to remember birds. So we remember birds by O. Sam Peabody, which is what bird? White-throated sparrow. Or, unless they say their names, like a towhee or an eastern peewee or a phoebe, those birds say their names. But the tufted titmouse says the name of the book of the Bible.
Peter,
Yeah, who said that?
I did. Because I guessed, that was the only one I ever guessed right.
Yeah. He said Peter. You'll never forget that one now, right?
Never, never.
But they're fun because they also like to tear the hair out of mammals and make nests, whether we like it or not. There's one bird that's mentioned in the Bible, and this is one of my favorite birds, but it really has a checkered past because in medieval times, you thought one of two ways about owls. You either thought of them as creatures of the night that did not want to see the light of God. And so owls were thought to be these dirty creatures, and they do drop pellets below their nests. But because they don't come out in the daytime, they don't want to see the light, so to speak. So they're bad, right? And you can see it's being mobbed by a magpie, which we don't have here, but it's also being mobbed by crows. And crows will mob anything, but comes Hieronymus Bosch, and I've always been a Bosch fan, but the other point of view on owls is that they're creatures of the night. And so they can enlighten us because they can see lightness in the dark, right? And they are symbols of wisdom. And Bosch has them in two of his panels in Garden of Earthly Delights. And in the panel on the left, he's in the fountain in the Garden of Eden. And he's hidden because he doesn't have to show himself much, because what are you going to contribute when Jesus as God is going preaching forth? And in the middle, you can see a couple of representations. One is a man with this oversized owl as a symbol of wisdom. And owls are in Bosch's paintings often as a symbol of wisdom, as in the image on the right, where you had this dancing dervish from the central panel, and it's being tempted. Cherries were symbols of temptation and lasciviousness. So the owl is keeping him from seeing that. So the owls are symbols. They're either good, they're symbols of wisdom and enlightenment, or they're symbols of bad. You be the judge. That was pretty much our bird walk. I just wanted to show a little bit about backyard birds, and we've been advised to take our feeders down because of an eye disease that a lot of birds are getting. But I have feeders right outside my window, and I'm always taking pictures. On the left is a downy woodpecker, common here, and a pine warbler, common here too also. If you go to Sandy Creek Park and go out near where the wetlands are, the swampy area is, you might see a red-headed woodpecker, because red-headed woodpeckers really do like to hang around swampy areas. All right, here's a picture of at the feeder of a cardinal in the background, a bluebird on the left, which is getting ready to land on the suet feeder, and a really cool little hermit thrush on top of the suet feeder. So it's always fun to see the hermit thrush. And on the right, there is a yellow-rumped warbler, another wintertime resident of ours, waiting for the bluebird to finish his lunch. I mean, he could have just gone to the left-hand side, but he's saying, "Are you done yet?" And remember that the hummingbird doesn't have long legs. Well, look at the legs on this common yellowthroat. I mean, that bird is bred to perch. That's why they call them passerines, or perching birds. And again, watching a perching insect, I forget which dragonfly that is, but we always can have wonderful things to see. Now, I'm putting this in when I know that we're running short on time, but this morning or yesterday morning when we were out walking, that was the group on the right for New Hope with New Hope Audubon Society. That's our group. We saw a wood stork at the impoundment area, Flat River Impoundment, and that was a lifer, or a first time that many of us had seen this bird. And if you look at the range map on the right, you can see why we were pretty excited about it, or all at Twitter, because the range map doesn't show many of these wood storks in our neck of the woods. They breed down in South America and Cuba, and then they're on the wetlands of Georgia, South Carolina, and year-round in Florida. But it was really exciting. The picture that I didn't have my camera with me because I said I didn't think I'd see many birds, but this was what it looked like through my binoculars, and it was breathtaking. So that was a lifer for me. So when you get a lifer, and it could be any of the birds that we've had on here before, it's always neat to see your first bird of the type. So that was fun this morning, or when I went out this morning to actually get a picture of it. All right, that concludes the formal part. Just some resources. I did mention New Hope Audubon Society and Chapel Hill Bird Club, which have Facebook pages, which have calendars, which tell you when their bird walks are. And their bird walks are informal. You don't have to have, you can borrow binoculars from them. New Hope Audubon Society on Wednesday mornings and Saturday mornings. Chapel Hill sometimes. National Audubon Society is a good source for advocacy. Cornell Labs and their website, All About Birds, is mostly cited as when you want to talk about your birds, you go to this site. My pictures today, a lot of them were from there, and the range maps were too. Field guides are by Sibley. They even have apps, which will show you these birds and play their calls. So I have the Sibley app on my phone, so I can play the bird calls and get an ID. There's also a brand new app called Merlin. If you're interested in birdsong, download Merlin, because you can record a song of a bird singing and it'll tell you what the bird is. And it's pretty good. All right. Lots of videos on YouTube, including I listened to one before the talk about Beethoven's 3 birds in the 6th Symphony. And they had a clarinetist, an oboist, and someone playing the other bird. With all that we've talked about, it should be pretty obvious that creation is varied, and as the prayer went, we've pretty much been given everything we need. The earth provides food, clothing, and shelter, all gifts, all of God. What we have to do is take care of it. It's up to us. We can do it. All right? And that's my parting message. And with that, just want to say it was fun to do it. And if anybody's still here, right? If you watch it again, I've posted some of my sources on there. But thank you for your attention.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Greg.
Greg. That was
Thank you. It was
Thanks.
so
wonderful.
wonderful. Why does it make you feel
Yes.
so good to see and hear birds? It
Isn't that the truth?
makes you, feel so happy. I think probably people or some people might have questions for Greg, but I thought maybe we should just say a little prayer for those who need to go. And then we can just open it to questions and conversations about birds. So I'd like to say an excerpt from an African prayer called, "I Let My Joy Be Free." Let us pray. Lord, I let my joy be free like a bird up to the sky. The night has flown by and I delight in the light. I delight in creation and the knowledge that you are behind it and beside it and before it and above it. And in us too, I feel my body alive and give thanks to you, O Lord. Amen.
Amen.